How's everybody doing? Good? Awesome. Great. We'll get to panel introductions in just a minute, but real quick, who here is trying to break into tech? Who here is going to be looking for a job in tech and then either now or in the next 6 to 12 months? Okay, cool. Who here is hiring for jobs in tech currently? Okay, you guys pay attention to each other, and after the session, maybe make some introductions. So tech means a lot of things to a lot of people. For me, it's web and mobile development. It could be AR, VR. It could be cryptography or cryptocurrency, like we just heard in that wonderful panel. It could be user interface design. So your own definition of tech. I think our panel today is a pretty good representative slice of the mobile and application space. So I'll just go down the panel here. I'll do some named introductions and let these guys go a little bit deeper. Like she was saying, I am Eddie Edenfield. I co-founded a company called Open Angler in 2015. I also have worked and now work again, I have 2 jobs, at SCAD. I currently work on the mobile application team for our Android and iOS mobile products, among other things. Here we have Patrick Bentley, and we have Peter Biekarck, and Sarah Pounders, and Josh Brown. And I'm just going to hand the mic. Actually, can we get the other microphone that these guys can pass around? Wonderful. Actually, let's start with Patrick. Patrick, let's hear all about what are you up to?
Currently, I'm project manager of emerging industries for the Economic Development Authority. But I recently just came out of a coding boot camp in July at Georgia Tech, and got a job right out of the coding boot camp, and it was really awesome. And then I had to turn it down because my wife got a job. Thank you, baby, for that. And before that, I started a nonprofit that was all about teaching kids how to code. So I'd always been kind of like a wannabe coder, and was doing HTML and CSS stuff, and the coding boot camp kind of just took me to the next level.
Yeah, I'm the co-founder and designer for Owl and Bear Design, together with my wife. We just started a company about a year ago, a little over a year ago. So far, I've been based out of Hamburg, Germany. I'm German, so if I say some weird words, that might be because of that. Before that, I was a freelancer and was working for like startups in Germany and like smaller clients. And then we decided to join our forces. My wife is a UX writer, and that comes in really handy when designing interfaces, and especially for UX purposes, really helps a lot.
My name is Sarah Pounders, and I work for a tech startup here in Atlanta called TourBuddy Apps. I'm the account manager, but truly, I do everything there except code. And this is not my background in technology. I went to college to be a teacher. I was a teacher in the public school system for 4 years, and I now am a tech enthusiast. So that's who I am.
Hey there. I work with a company called OnPoint Digital here in Savannah, and we provide an enterprise training application and platform for delivering training content. And I'm the director of UI and UX. I manage a team of professionals who provide the kind of branded experience for our various customers.
So these days, when you hear tech, you hear a lot of emphasis placed on these coding boot camps or online learning, and so much of it is geared toward web development or mobile development. Josh and I think, came up in a time maybe a little bit before that. So, and I think where I'm going with this is we want to just talk about how we got to now. So Josh and I both went the self-taught route. Peter, you did some self-taught stuff, but you also went to school for industrial design. Sarah, you did some exploration to kind of figure out whether or not programming was right for you before maybe you arrived at what you're doing now. And Patrick, you went through the coding boot camp. I think it would be wonderful if we could hear what that experience is like. And then, actually, maybe let's start with you, Josh, since you have the mic. what was the landscape like when you were starting out, when there wasn't a lot of these resources, perhaps?
Right. So when I graduated college, I have a actual degree in communication, which is more or less unrelated to my actual day-to-day now. And but I kind of had dabbled in graphic design, and it was right around that time when there was that conversation between where's print design going, what is web design, and right around that time, it became apparent that if you called yourself a graphic designer, then everybody was going to ask you to do web design for them, just because those skill sets are very similar. So, there were not a lot of like coding boot camps. I mean, this is around 2005. There was nothing like a coding boot camp, and there really wasn't anything like a degree that would give you the kind of skills that you needed to actually be an effective web designer. So, it's just like a lot of nights and weekends, essentially teaching myself JavaScript and learning about the browser and the environment that it provides to create applications. So, I kind of did that as a freelancer for a bit, and then here in Savannah and in Raleigh, North Carolina, and then kind of got hooked up with OnPoint Digital, and just kind of went on from there.
Yeah, quick follow-up question. So do you think self-taught is still a viable option today? If someone were starting out today, as someone who hires or someone who leads a team, how realistic is someone to teach themselves coding and then land a job?
One of the, in my experience, this industry is, I think, unique in that all the tools and all the information that you need to teach yourself and to even make yourself effective, they're all out there for free. I mean, I never had to pay for a course on JavaScript. I could have. There were things, you could pay for online learning and stuff like that, but for the most part, between a number of really good resources like the Mozilla Developer Network and other websites, all the information you need to teach yourself this kind of discipline is out there, and it's very democratic. It kind of follows open source, kind of taps into that whole kind of idea that information should be out there and available to everybody. So I think to answer your question about is it still viable? Yes, I think that it is. Though I think there are, like I said, it was nights and weekends for almost 10 years, to get to where you become really effective. Whereas things like the coding boot camps, and these days there's a lot more opportunities to kind of shortcut that process.
Sarah, you do everything but write code. How did you get to where you are today? What was your path?
Okay. I was a teacher for 4 years, and I just kind of lost my passion after that 4th year and just felt like I don't think I want to do this for the rest of my life, and explored a lot of different options. And I saw something on CBS this morning about high school kids learning to code, and I said, oh, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a software developer. And I went to the Rails bridge. I lived in Boston at the time. I learned Ruby on Rails. I mean, cried through the install. Lynda.com, I tried to teach myself HTML and CSS through self-taught stuff, and that was great. And I did get to a point, though, where I realized I like working with people better than just sitting behind the computer and kind of doing, writing the code or trying to solve those problems. So my job now, I get to work with clients and do demos, and I think that I just figured out that's where my strength is, in working with people and kind of teaching them about technology and delivering things that I think that they need instead of maybe the software side.
Wonderful. Peter, yours is an interesting story. You both have the background and you also run a business. So maybe from both sides of the equation, both what you're looking for in the partnerships or other employees or contractors you might work with, and your own background, what are you seeing as the landscape like today in 2018?
So I went to to school for a somewhat related topic was industrial design. I was a carpenter by trade before, and I really enjoyed making furniture and wanted to kind of like transition from actually making a single piece furniture into like how do you mass produce that, and like just come up with a design and then have somebody else do that for me and just sell it. So I was really not going into industrial design with the idea of going into tech with it. And in the one semester we had user interface design as like the big subject, and I really started liking it there, especially because the short iteration cycles, and they're super inexpensive in comparison to like you build a chair and then it doesn't look the way you want it to, so you build another chair, so you need the same amount of wood, you need like hours in the wood shop, and so it's like cost intensive, time intensive, and labor intensive, and it's a lot shorter with tech. So I kind of stuck with it and did an internship after, and then freelanced, and yeah, and then starting my own company now, or a year ago, we also do pretty much everything but the coding part, which we don't do. I'm always kind of thinking about like getting into that and smarting myself up about that, but then I'm not sure if I should split my focus between designing and developing. Maybe it's better if I stick to what I know and start continue to hone that skill and improving, as opposed to like branching out in something that there's a lot of people out there already doing that really well. So I guess what we're looking for in terms of landscape for the future is like people to work with in terms of iOS and Android development.
Wonderful. Patrick, let's hear about the bootcamp experience and actually what you were doing prior to that. I know you've been into this for a long time before that.
So I think I'm really kind of like the product of the Savannah community and all the coders who were here and who like created things before I did. So much like Sarah, let me back up a little bit. So came out of school in 2008 with a psychology degree, which is a horrible degree to have. Sorry if you have one. And 2008 was just a really rough time for, a 22-year-old person to come out of school with a bachelor's degree, right? And so I came home, I had a son and I needed to work. And so, I was just working really crappy jobs and ran across an article one day, and it was 8 reasons why your kid needs to learn how to code. And my first thought was, well, there's no place in Savannah where a kid, particularly an African-American kid, can go and learn how to code, right? Like if I want to learn how to play basketball or football, there are like many different resources for that in the community. But if I want to learn how to code right now, where do I go and do that? So it didn't exist. So like I started learning how to code really just to teach other people how to code and teach kids. So that was like my first, thing. So I can remember like in 2013, like, showing my mom like, oh, look at these bubbles that I made, and all that kind of stuff. And so it was really cool. And looking back on it, it's like, it's cute now. And, I'm like, oh, this is horrible work. But, it was like my first, kind of soiree into it. And then so I started getting introduced to people in the community because I wanted to teach kids how to code. And so shouts out to Kevin Laver. He's not here right now, but and Yvonne Jaffault, because my first experience was Railsbridge, and like I built, a voting app. What was that thing called? I forget what it was called, but it's like this simple. It's like the Hello World version for Rails, and that kind of like set it off for me. It was like, oh, look, I built this app and I did it in 4 hours, and that was kind of it. And so I started, continuing with Urban STEM and got better, and I was like talking about tech on my Facebook page, and eventually somebody like called my bluff and they were like, hey, you want to build me a website? And I was like, yeah, I can do that, and so I like struggled through it, but I did it, and I got paid $400 for my first website, and I was like, I am officially a business now. Like I did it, I did this thing, somebody paid me for it, I'm gonna keep doing this. I just have to do it like 100 more times and I'm good, and so that's how I started. And I remember like coming to Yvonne and like B-Ray and a bunch of different people, and so I've started like 2 web development companies even before I got to the boot camp. My partner's back there. We actually built a thing, and it was, what's up, Randall? An MVP, and we built it, and that was awesome. But so I've always been kind of like, I don't know, just try new things. And then got the job working at SEDA, and basically what I do there is manage business attraction for technology, and that just like put me even more in my arena, right? And even, you know, just around smarter people who I could talk to, and, you know, like they kind of had to talk to me anyway, you know? So, you know, I asked more questions, and one of the things we did, there was a project, we were trying to get the iron yard here. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the iron yard, but they were like the largest short coding boot camp, you know, and they had like locations everywhere. And along that route, we ended up talking to Georgia Tech, and they were interested in doing the same thing in Savannah. And so it just was really fortuitous that, you know, I got to be like at the front lines of like helping to bring this coding boot camp here. And I was like this wannabe coder, and, you know, it was just like, it was perfect, you know. And so I ended up going to this boot camp, and it was really intense. Like, yeah, I got married and almost got divorced like really quickly because I was just so much time. I'm joking. I love you. It was a lot of time, and it was really intense. And but I got really comfortable, and after I left that course, I felt really, really comfortable and really, really confident in my ability. And then immediately reality slapped me in the face, and then I realized that like I don't know as much as I thought, but I'm much better. And so that's kind of how I went. It was really intense, and yeah, awesome.
I think the reality check you just talked about is something that a lot of us call imposter syndrome. And who caught the keynote today with Devin O'Brien? He kind of touched on that a little bit. And I think it's probably safe to say all of us up here have had to battle imposter syndrome at one point. But congrats on $400 on your first website. I only made $50 on mine. Yeah. So, but that's actually something I would, you know, if web development or mobile development is kind of the way you want to go, just put yourself out there, get some projects under your belt. But yeah, I think what would be good is to kind of explore what challenges each of you faced. Like, I know there's a few people here maybe trying to land that first job. What were some of the challenges you faced either in the interview process or in that first job you finally got there? I know it's these days can be a very rigorous interview process depending on where you go. I know you're right off the heels, and then maybe of an interview, and then let's go down the line after that.
So my first interview, I was really lucky because the first job that I applied to after boot camp, I got, right? And I was fortunate because it was a really good combination of coding and talking, so it was like perfect for me, you know. Because I don't know if you really want to get into this now, but like I kind of feel like the hiring process for developers can sometimes be really it just doesn't make any sense, and it's archaic, you know, like whiteboarding or like, you know, asking you to like talk about algorithms on demands, because that's not really the way you're going to work, right? Like you're going to code some stuff, and then if it doesn't work, you're going to go to Google or Stack Overflow or whatever, or your Slack channel or whatever, and you're going to find out, you're going to search until you find it, and then you're going to fix it. And so I really had a challenge with just the process itself, and then applying for jobs, because like I've noticed that the descriptions for jobs, they're always looking for like this unicorn, right? They want like 7 years experience in React, even though it's only been around for 2, right? And you know, they want you to like, you know, have like all this different experience, and those people don't exist, right? And so I got some really good advice, and it was, if you think you qualify for like 60% of the job of what they're asking for, then apply. So for me, it was just like making myself, like believing, like I can probably do that, or I can lie my way through this interview good enough, you know.
Yeah, Peter, what advice would you give starting out?
Well, so to get a job, I only had to apply for one internship. After I was done with industrial design, I applied for an internship at what is Germany's competitor or biggest competitor for Uber. It's called MyTaxi. It's a taxi hailing company, and they were looking for a UX design intern. And their process was they put out a case study. You were supposed to do like a homework case study basically, and like apply with that. From my background as an industrial designer, that whole what they taught us in school, what I really can transfer one-to-one to the tech side is that it's a user-centered process. You have to like take the user side, and we heard it before in the UX panel up here. you're not your user. So don't assume that you know the answer because that's how you would do it, but actually talk to people and go out there and do the testing. But doing the case study for the application process also applies to what we're more doing as a freelancing business, basically, is like if you're looking for clients, we wouldn't just write them an email and say like, hey, are you looking for a UX designer? Hit us up if you do. We would look at their product beforehand and identify like a pain point, like a small part of their process or their product, identify that pain point and then come up with a solution, even if it's just a wireframe, quick and dirty, or you go a little bit deeper into it, but like show them what we would do if they would hire us on, and just send this to them for free without them asking for it. That's like your first introduction to them. It's like, this is how, if you would work together with us, this is what it could look like. Leave enough room for their own thoughts because it's very unlikely you're gonna hit the nail on the head with your first draft, but be precise and but leave wiggle room basically. And then, yeah, basically create an appetite for them to work with you.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah, I think just trying to make yourself valuable and almost, try to anticipate what the employer is looking for, and what you said.
I would say in my own experience, I would say that is very critical of being able to identify the value that you can add to your employer, or if it's a freelance, or if you're a business situation, to your client. Understanding how you can add value is one of the most important things to try to understand in the interview process from my own experience. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
And Josh, as someone who hires, and by the way, did I cut you off? Did you have more to add? Okay. As someone who actually manages people, what are some of the challenges you see new employees struggle with who might be green or new to the industry?
So I think, especially these days, there's such a focus on coding, on having, some experience in previous projects or having gone through something like a coding boot camp, and we want to call those things hard skills. I think there's a huge focus on the hard skills. You have to know, and you have to know languages. You have to know the technical information and the patterns that are being used these days, whether it's Angular versus React, and of course that's another whole thing because those things change every 18 months. But I would say something to focus on, and one way to really bring a lot of value to almost any company is to focus on soft skills. Make sure that you're a good communicator, that you realize that, almost, I can't remember which talk it was earlier, it said that almost no complex problem is solved by a single person anymore. It's almost all teamwork. And if you have to be able to work as part of a team and communicate effectively with people at your level, but you also have to be able to communicate people above, at or above your level as well. So I'd say a focus on those soft skills, and don't be afraid to, find ways to highlight those things as part of an application process.
Yeah, and I would just add to that too. There's this idea of you're interviewing the company as much as they're interviewing you, and I think cultural fit is very important. So I think as much as you can, and I'm gearing this toward people again who are looking for jobs currently, but interview them and decide if this is the right cultural fit for you. Josh, what's your current toolbox look like? What kind of tools are you using in the day in and day out?
So in my particular team at OnPoint, we use traditional web development tools and skills. So HTML and CSS, essentially our UI framework is just a JavaScript client-side application. So having familiarity with JavaScript, being able to understand how to consume APIs. We kind of have like a React style framework, though React is not, that's not a condition of being able to be effective on the team. So, our tooling set, we use WebStorm, but any ID is essentially works in our environment. So, just those traditional web development core skills of HTML, knowing CSS code, knowing JavaScript code.
Yeah. So to the non-developer, or you're not strictly speaking either. But yeah, what's your tool set of, what are the other kind of roles in tech? What kind of tools really help you in your efficiency in your work?
Well, talking about communication, a tool that really helps me in my day-to-day job is Snagit, and where I take videos of what's going on our website, or even a screen recorder for the phone to see what's happening in the iOS or Android app, because it's hard with technology to say, well, it doesn't work. And we have a team, and it's just, communication is so important, but those tools help you communicate even better for what we do. But for me, like we were talking about projects we did, I built a WordPress site for free, and that taught me so much, and I use WordPress every day almost. And I think, you know, as sexy and fun as we all want to be, it feels like it all goes back to WordPress for a lot of us. And it's a crappy tool, but a lot of people use it. So I would recommend learning how to use WordPress. And Canva. Canva is a really cool tool for like non-designer people. Don't look at me badly, but it's free, and you can create really cool graphics and even share them with like your team so that all your graphics look the same and they look beautiful-ish.
Yeah, I guess it depends on what aspect you're looking at, what kind of tools I would use. As I said, we live in Germany for the most part of the year, and we're trying to set up like a client base in the US and have a client base in Germany, so we want to go back and forth. My wife is a US American, I'm German, so we want to kind of split our time. And huge for that is communication, as you said. And I think after 1 year of running our business, we already have 6 Slack channels with 6 different clients. So that's a huge help, because you can like share files and screenshots and like communicate within like teams within each Slack channel. It's a fantastic tool. Highly recommend that for communication purposes. For design purposes, I use Sketch for the most part. I think it's great. It's like a reduced Photoshop without all the craziness that Photoshop can do. Photoshop is a fantastic product, but it's like a bottomless pit. And 99% of the stuff you don't have to use as a screen designer. So Sketch really is like reduced to the max in that sense. And it has a lot of plugins for InVision, for example, which is another fantastic tool to create like from low fidelity to high fidelity wireframes and click dummies. They also continue to add on more tools. One is Freehand, that is great for like everybody can use Freehand to like create low fidelity wireframes. So if you work with a client, it's basically across the Atlantic Ocean. You can give them the pen in the hand in their hand and say like, what do you? I mean, I don't understand what you're trying to say. Why didn't you draw it up for me? And then you can watch it live on your screen unfold. And then you as a designer, or I as a designer, get a better idea. And as many stakeholders as they want can be on there. Can be a developer on there. They can like say immediately that that's not going to work because of X, Y, and Z or something, or have a better solution for it. So Sketch, InVision. For higher fidelity prototyping, there's something called Framer. You have to know a little bit of coding. So I personally have to stay away from that, unfortunately, but it's really great. The other designers that I know work with it, and the outcome is fantastic. It feels like the real app. It has micro animations that you can, like how the button behaves and what happens, the transitions. It's fantastic. There used to be a product called, what's it called? Pixel, I think. But they were bought by Google and then just discontinued. Something that's similar to that is ProtoPie, where you can also create very high fidelity click dummies. It's like maybe a dumbed down version of Framer, I would say. Yeah, I think those are most of the tools. And then like time tracking tools are huge for a freelancer. Like have a good tool that works on your phone and on your computer is great. And I cannot stay away from pen and paper. I always use pen and paper, especially early on, and just like to get quick ideas out, and like everybody can use the pen and paper.
Yeah. Patrick, did what you learned in the boot camp, is that what you're using now, or is it a subset of your tools?
It's like a subset. So Create React app is basically like Ruby on Rails, but for React. You know, it kind of automates the creation of your file systems and Webpack and Babel and all that kind of stuff. And so I use Create React App, but then I also, so since coming out of the boot camp, now I have like my own personal way that I like my file set up. And so like I went and found a tutorial on Medium about how to just create your own project generator. So I have like my own project generator that I use. Envision's good for, definitely for prototyping mobile apps. Proposify too. So a lot of the work that I do is freelance right now. So writing proposals is horrible, and it's always good to have like some software that does that for you. So Proposify is just, it has a bunch of different templates and it allows you to edit and, you know, but you can create several different proposals and change the prices and, you know, send it by email and collect electronic signatures, and you can do all that for like $25 a month. And so I use that a lot. Slack, you know, yeah, and yeah, write that down. No. And Balsamic is like for web stuff, so it's just another prototyping wireframe kind of thing. Yeah, so that's really it, and just learning. Like, so like yes and no. Some of them were really good. I think the boot camp kind of gives you a good like base level, you know. But after that, everybody works different. So like different things have like honestly, going through the interview process has helped me identify a whole bunch of tools because, you know, as I'm interviewing, either when I'm talking to somebody or it may be a question that they ask, like it'll send me down a rabbit hole. So like testing, I was on Slack asking like a million questions about testing, and so that led me to like Cypress, which is like an automated testing thing, and Circle CI. So I think it just depends on how deep you are, but yeah, so it gave me a good start, and then I just started asking people who knew better than I did.
Yeah. You mentioned Kevin Lauver and Yvonne earlier, and I know Kevin has been a mentor for me personally, and honestly, one piece of advice, find a mentor, and that is going to just really accelerate your learning. Having someone who can reach out to when you're stuck, especially in development. You know, you can Google anything, it's all out there on Google, but you know, knowing the right question to ask is half the battle. So how important has mentorship been for you, and you know, what advice would you say for someone who may not have a mentor, or is, you know, talk to that, I guess, a little bit, if you could. And then,
like, if you don't have one, find one immediately. I think that developers particularly tend to be very open. I think it's the whole open source, you know, movement. Like, you know, we all want to build things and then we want other people to use them. And so typically, like, I've never had a developer, like, you know, be rude to me, like, no matter how dumb the question was, right? Mentorship is probably the only reason that I'm developing at all. Like, even for interview questions. So my partner Randall is a mentor, right? And you know, Yvonne, and you know, she's more of a mentor on the business side, and you know, Kevin, even Eddie. I mean, you know, like I'm not afraid to ask those questions. And so like we've got a group Slack for the techies in Savannah, Tech SAV. If so, you guys should join that too. Join it. And so like I go in the dev channel and I'll just ask questions, and typically, you know, I'll get responses within, you know, 10 hours, depending on how busy people are. But truly, like, the mentorship is why I'm here. Like, I mean, I've wanted to quit several times, even during the boot camp. Like, I think, and like some of my cohorts are here, and some other people who came like right behind me. Like, there are definitely moments where you're like, man, I don't know if this was the right life decision for me. Like, you know, yeah. Like, and without, you know, somebody to just say, do it, you know, like, yeah. It would have been done.
Peter, did you have a mentorship network when you were starting things out, or?
A little bit. One of the designers at My Taxi, the internship I was at, he's a really outgoing guy and really, really nice, and I think a really talented designer. His name's Leander Lansing. He's based in Hamburg. And it was really nice. He called me up when he was freelancing on the side, and he would, if he would be swamped, he would call me and ask me if I could help him out, and then we'd like sit next to each other on his couch on a Saturday afternoon and like try to bust it out until Sunday or something, and that really helped me. And it also helps with what you mentioned earlier, the imposter syndrome, because I think everybody gets that when you reach the next plateau of skill level, then you're the weakest link there, and then you have the imposter syndrome again. So it happens to me over and over. And it really helps to work with somebody because you notice that they have that too. And nobody is really 100% accomplished or perfect. So I think it's great for that too, to have a mentor to like see, you're just sparring with somebody in that way.
Yeah, Sarah, I know you had a kind of a built-in mentorship network when you were starting out. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, yes, I guess. So well, my husband, he is a developer, and it really wasn't on my radar. I don't know. I don't know what I thought he did. But then I started getting interested in software development, and I'm like, oh, so you know about this? He's like, yeah, I know about that. So, he helped me do lots of different, like with the install, he was there when I cried. And he's helped me a lot understand some core concepts and about software development. But I think working for Yvonne Jouffreau, who you're talking about, she's a head of Tech SAV, one of the founders of it. Again, if you haven't joined, join. Has been phenomenal. I mean, I have to say working with her has taught me more than a 4-year degree, just on the business side, software development, working with clients, writing a contract, which I really hate, but she's really good at. So I think that's been a lot of where my progress has come from.
Wonderful. Can he finish up and then we turn it up to the audience?
Okay, great.
Okay,
So,
wonderful.
When I came along, there weren't really this support network. I don't think was really around there. I wasn't super aware of it when I was kind of looking for a job and tools or things that would help me kind of be more valuable. So I would say don't be afraid to, if you're already working, working at a place, don't be afraid to reach out to people that you work with. I mean, we solve a lot of problems at OnPoint, and you definitely have looked to other developers, who are not necessarily, because we have, client-side developer do a lot of stuff in the browser, and then we have traditional server developers, and a lot of times it's sort of like this oil and water, but there's a particular person that I leaned on a lot when I was in the early days working on our UI framework, and that was a huge help. So just kind of a technical mentor there, and then even on a smaller scale, even within our own team, we try to take people who are new to the team. We try I try to encourage everybody to share information. We use Slack too. It's a tool that we use for communication. I try to, if there's a question and I see the question more than twice, then it's like, okay, let's everybody bring this out to the general chat channel and let's answer the question so everybody is aware of the answer, and try to encourage people to mentor each other, even just in the moment or on this particular topic. And mentorship doesn't necessarily always have to mean some sort of very formal thing that you go out and identify a person that you work with on a long scale. So
Wonderful. So I think we want to turn it to the audience now for some questions. Can't wait. Anybody have any questions? We have a question up front here.
I'm going to bring the mic over.
Hello. I just had a question. So for these online self-taught things, I'm trying to learn code on Code Academy. How do I know which jobs I qualify for, or what standards there are for the positions they want?
I think that's a really good question. I think to Patrick's point about the 60% rule of if there's a 60% overlap in maybe in what you've learned in the coding track versus what the job is. I mean, there's never going to be 100% I'm qualified for this job. But in terms of specifics, like 2018, you probably should be learning React, unless the job description says something differently. Anybody else want to take that question?
Angular is real hot right now. I kind of think a lot of jobs I've been running into lately, they really want you to understand just vanilla JavaScript, right? Because I use jQuery most of the time, and so it's it really abstracts a lot of the functionality of JavaScript, and so a lot of times that's a good snag, is because most of us are so used to using jQuery that we don't know how to manipulate the DOM without it, and so learning vanilla JavaScript is good. MySQL or Mongo for backend is always good too, I think.
I guess like for the like individual like JavaScript, like if you go through a course, like how can you tell like how good you are at it, or like are you proficient or like intermediate or like stuff like that?
So I'll take a stab at that. Proficiency in at least in my experience, and just from talking to other software developers, the concept of being like, I'm done learning, and this thing that's like it's sort of like a martial art. You're always moving towards some level of perfection that you'll never actually reach. So I think the key is when you're using something like Code Academy or something like that, and you're trying to teach yourself JavaScript, which is an ocean, is a whole world there. Understanding that there are certain key things you need to do. JavaScript is just a tool. So it's like, what problems can I solve with JavaScript or HTML or CSS or any language that you're in? And I think that's why, to that point, knowing like the vanilla JavaScript is important because, 4 years ago it was all Angular. Now it's React. Now it's Angular 2. And so knowing the underlying technology, I think, is really key because things are going to change. And so, and also because of that, being able to solve real-world problems, actual problems that bring value to a company, rather than trying to come up with a metric for how proficient you are.
I'll come over to this and we get this first.
Thanks, Josh. Yeah, like when you start solving your own problems, that's when I started feeling confident. Like before, I would always have to ask somebody, why am I getting this error? And then when I started becoming like self-sufficient, then I felt like I was probably ready for a job, because that's really what they want, I think, is like, and Eddie hires people so he can affirm it. But I think like when you can answer your own questions, like as long as they're not like super complicated, then you're probably getting towards that. But, and simpler than that, when you can build a thing, like when a thing works and you can put it, and when you can deploy it, when you can build it and deploy it, you're probably ready for a junior dev job, I think.
Yeah. Next question.
Thank you, everybody, for your insight on everything. I had my beginnings 20 years ago, what is now UX. And to your bubble point, Patrick, you reminded me of something, and it was the spirit of creating. So one question for everybody: what is fun about what you do?
When I was a kid, I loved playing with Legos, and I feel like I get to do that as an adult in building software. And I try to remind myself of why I got into this. It's the act of building something and then seeing it work and function at the end of the day. And then if it breaks, I just fix it. And it's, continuous building.
I would say the same thing as Eddie. I'd add problem solving. Like I like solving puzzles and fixing complicated things. And coding is for sure that, it can be mind-boggling sometimes, but it's really awesome when you've been working on a problem for a day or two and then you finally figure the thing out. It sucks when it's a semicolon, but it's good when you can fix a problem.
Yeah, definitely. Both of those points I can second. Like I said, I'm a carpenter originally, like way back in the day. And what was the best thing about that? Before you close up the shop and turn off the lights, you turn around and you see like half a chair, and you know that you worked on that all day, and you see the results right after you're done. And that translates 100% to what I do right now. And I love what I do. I don't want to do anything else ever. So I'm a little scared of all that technology coming on, maybe taking my job away, maybe not, I don't know. And from the puzzle solving that you mentioned, Patrick, the UX part of the job that I do is exactly that. You have a problem that exists in a product or in a service, and how you fix it is by increasing your user experience and making people enjoy using the product, and that is puzzle solving, really. And just like user testing, you like iterate quickly, you make super low fidelity dummies, and you go out to people or stakeholders of any kind and test, and then you see your next pain point and you go fix that until you're done, which you're never.
I think it's fun to help clients create their apps and use our website and just take them from, well, how do I do that, to, wow, I just created this, and that really, it drives me, so.
When I first started out, I mean, it's easy to feel like the internet is this huge mature thing, but it's actually still very young. And especially 10 or more years ago, you know, it mainly just text documents that were linking from one to the other. But it's become this incredibly open platform for development. I mean, I don't think that anybody 15 or 20 years ago would have realized that the web would become what it is now, which is just, you know, this amazing, you know, kind of experiment. And I feel like every website, every solution, every time you solve a unique problem, and there are still unique problems to be solved on the web. I feel like, you know, I'm kind of contributing to that larger whole. So.
Hi, my name is Casey Brown, and I'm a local developer. And like you, Patrick, I started out late 90s rather, and there weren't a lot of resources for African American developers. But my question is to the whole council is, how do you guys feel about certifications and using certifications as an introduction for new developers to get a better understanding of proprietary technologies like Salesforce and Microsoft and even Apple? Because for the most part, they have cloud-based platforms, and there seems to be a migration from legacy systems to cloud-based systems. So how do you feel about certifications in that aspect of the IT industry?
I'll just, so I think there could definitely be value in that. I think not every business is necessarily going to need someone who has a certification necessarily in Salesforce, or in some sort of a certification there. I do think that in a more general sense, having these certifications, going through that process, being able to show the work. If you have, like, GitHub is like your portfolio if you are a coder. So make sure that the things that you the work that you put in to get a certification, that you have a way to kind of prove that a portfolio of that work to take in your application process.
I think I'm not a developer, so maybe it's a little bit different, but I think certifications can be definitely a door opener, but I think it may be even more helpful if you show that you're willing and able to solve the problem that you're applying, that you would do if you have the job, if you would gotten the job. If you show that you're willing and able to do that within your application before anybody even asks, so to the point what I said earlier, just do a little bit of the job you would be doing and show them that you can. I doubt that a lot of people are going to be like, well, he did it perfectly, but he doesn't have the certification X, Y, and Z, so he's not going to get the job. So I don't think that's likely to happen. Maybe I'm wrong, because I don't know exactly how it works in your industry, but.
So I think certifications, and I'm still super junior anyway, so I think they can help, right? Somebody came up to me the other day and they were like, "Oh, do you know Salesforce stuff?" And I was like, I mean, I can learn it in in a week, but it would have been good to have already, had some experience in that, before, I think it's good to have a little bit of experience before somebody comes up to you. I don't know if they'll get you a job, though. What do you think, Eddie?
Yeah, I think it really depends on what your end game is, right? So if you're looking to work at maybe, a big enterprise type of environment, maybe someplace here in, Gulfstream, I don't work there, I don't know. I know a few people here that do. But I know, my next door neighbor, for example, he's PMP certified, he's a project manager. In certain employers, certification is important. For, I think, a lot of us up here, maybe working in smaller startups, I think I would say for 99% of tech startups, they don't care about certification, they don't care about where you went to school. They, maybe increasingly a little bit on the school part. But I think it really depends. If you're trying to land a job at a big enterprise type of environment, certifications are going to be much more important. And I would just say getting Salesforce certified, if your goal is to make a lot of money, that's a good thing to have. Salesforce developers are like the highest paid in the industry. So, you know, it really just depends on where you want to go.
Okay, we have time for one more question. Anybody? Anybody at all?
iPhone or Android?
I do both in a hybrid environment, but personally prefer iPhone.
I do both. Pixels are really nice, and they're better than iPhone, so I'm kind of leaning towards the Pixel right now.
iPhone for the last couple of years, but I was eyeballing the Pixel. Unfortunately, there was no really good deals on Black Friday, so far I don't have one.
iPhone.
Android.